afternoon, everyone. It is terrific to be with you today. I want to begin with a story. And if you recognize the style of writing, or maybe even the story, you will know that this person wrote something that many people remember. All I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, Robert Fulghum. This is another story from that same text. In the early dry dark of an October Saturday evening, the neighborhood children are playing hide and seek. I remember how I could become part of the game in a moment if invited. Adults don't play hide and seek. Not for fun anyway. Too bad. Hey, did you ever have a kid in your neighborhood who always hid so good nobody could find him? We did. After a while, we'd give up on him and go off, leaving him to rot wherever he was. He's probably still hidden somewhere for all I know. And as I write this, the neighborhood game goes on. And there's a kid under a pile of leaves in the yard just under my window. He's been there a long time now, and everybody else is found, and they're about to give up on him over at the base. I considered going out to the base and telling everyone where he was hiding. And I thought about setting the leaves on fire to drive him out. Finally, I just yelled, "Get found, kid," out the window. Scared him so bad he probably wet his pants and started crying and ran home to tell his mother. It's really hard to know how to be helpful sometimes. That's the first half of the story. I will conclude my section with the ending in just a bit. How many times, I wonder, have we experienced moderate to serious stress just this year? So let's do a little checking for honesty and awareness. How many of you would admit to saying in the last 12 months, I've experienced moderate to significant stress? That's a lot of stress in this room. How many of you have experienced moderate to significant stress sometime today? A few beyond Rebecca. Good, all right. Some of you were reading the slide here, and that's good, because that's the reason Brandy and I are addressing you in December, right before the holidays, and also because all of you work with all sorts of folks. So beyond family and friends, we have colleagues, supervisors, people we manage. That's an unbelievable number. But I asked you first so that we wouldn't say that number can't be right. It must be right because more than 70 people in this room raised their hand. 70% of U.S. workers stress about their health, jobs, and finances. And of course, we all know we bring with us into the workplace everything that we live with throughout the day, don't we? The impact. 41% of the people in this study said they admit that it causes them to be less productive. So that's not a manager's perception. That's an employee saying, I am less productive because of the stress I carry with me. Those last two numbers, that's huge. 15% looked for a new job because of the stress they experienced. While 14%, again, this is the employee saying this is true, not a perception. 14% of employees admit to missing work due to stress. Well, if we are to believe the U.S. Bureau of Labor statistics, this is of October 2023, there were 135 million full-time employees. And if you take the average hourly rates, however you get to that, at $29 an hour, I won't do the math, except I think we can all agree we are losing billions of dollars every year because of stress. So, I would like you to just put your forks down for just 1 minute. Take a short break as I do a little activity to make a point here. I'm going to take my two hands, and I think I can fill the room with my voice. I'm going to take my two hands, and I'm going to move them back and forth just like this. And every time my hands pass by each other, I want you to clap one time. Just clap when my hands pass. It's like Simon Says. I call it clapping says. Ready? Here we go. See, we can all do it. Wonderful. Simple. My hands are not very close. Notice how easy it is for us to get into a habit. It took me 5 times of going back and forth before you just expected to clap again. We just do it. There's no mindfulness, there's no awareness, we just fall into it. You know for yourself, as well as people you have in your life, that many of us get stuck in bad places, bad relationships, unhealthy jobs, unhealthy places to live, and we stay there, don't we? We stay sometimes in places that are not good for us, that don't bring joy or happiness, and certainly don't reduce stress. We stay in it because we know it. And we're comfortable in it. We might not like it, but it's a lot less scary than what we don't know. And so we stay in this. So what I want to talk about today is just, and I have 12 minutes before I bring my better half up, Brandy, to talk about something very exciting happening in King County. So I'm not going to cover the 70 stress busters listed on the cards that you all have today. You can read those for yourself. I want to talk about three things, three strategies we can do and cost nothing. I think most of us love that last part. I think this is the real challenge of wellness. Challenge of wellness is really the challenge of change. And change is just plain hard and scary. Transformation begins with a change of habits and mindset. Change. So let's look at one change we can make in our life that costs nothing. Isn't it amazing? I put that picture up and some of you laughed and all of you smiled. Tip 1, strategy 1, laughter. It's a wonderful picture, isn't it? Anybody want to guess what the average grade school age child, how many times a day they laugh? Yes, believe it or not, there are a multitude of studies on this. Take a wild guess.
100.
100. I heard someone say 50. The first study I came across, it said, are you ready? 400 times a day. And I thought, no way. No way. So I went and I found study after study. I couldn't find any study that said less than 300. So I'm going to say 300 to 400 times a day. And if you still say, yeah, I'd like to see those studies, can we all agree that children laugh a lot? Let's just say that then. Children laugh a lot. Anybody want to guess what studies say about us adults? How many times a day does the average adult in America laugh? How many people say less than 10? How many people say more than 10? The first study I came across said 7 times a day. And I said, that's way too low. I kept searching until I found 20. I saw multiple studies. The lowest was 7. The largest was 20. Let's put statistics aside because that will only send us down a rabbit hole. Can we all agree that children laugh more than adults do? How many of you have grandchildren? It takes almost nothing for a little kid to laugh. They do it so freely. There's no self-consciousness about it. And the silliest things make them laugh. Now, here's the thing that I'm going to say something really obvious here. So all these studies were looking at what happens as we age, and what they found out is as we age, we laugh less. So it's not as black and white as to say a child laughs 400 times and then you become an adult and you'll laugh only 7 times, right? It's as we get older, we laugh less. And what I want to suggest is laughter is a wonderful way to reduce stress. Yes, studies show all sorts of chemical things that happen that are triggered by us simply laughing. Right? The hormone that causes that bad feeling inside of us, cortisol, actually gets reduced with all 3 things I'm going to share with you today. It actually gets reduced, and that wonderful hormone called endorphins that get released that make us feel joyful and happy increase. All the studies show this. The other piece, and it seems kind of obvious, is, and many of us naturally do this, we search for something to take our mind off of. But what I found most interesting was this last piece. When you see a stressful event, you interpret it as a threat or as a challenge. And therein lies the difference in how our body's going to respond. So if we interpret that stressful event in front of us as a threat, we all know the fight or flight response, and we all know what happens inside of our bodies when we see something as a threat. But if we turn it into a challenge, and that's what the study's point was, that laughter changes the perspective, and instead of our brain saying threat and all of our chemicals in our body are going to start reacting in a certain way, instead, we see it as a challenge. It is a positive way that opens up different ways of approaching whatever that stressful event is. Laughter. This is me doing my favorite thing, which has all sorts of great benefits. We have someone from Curves here, the owner of Curves here in Federal Way, and she can talk so much better than I can about exercise and diet as wellness. But one of these, I love hiking, right? On the left by the way, that is a spot in Washington. I couldn't believe I caught the rainbow in the waterfall. And on the right, that was a day hike on the Appalachian Trail. Here's the cool thing. You do not have to go to the Pacific Crest Trail for 6 months of your life or go to the Appalachian Trail and spend time hiking the whole thing to get the benefit. This beautiful Harvard University study, and that is one of many you could quote, says you only need to spend about 20 to 30 minutes in a nature environment. That could be a garden, right? We have someone from, what's the name of it? What she said. At the Rhodey Garden, I like that. You can go spend 20 to 30 minutes after your supervisor or your colleague or your employee drove you crazy and go spend 30 minutes at the garden, go grab lunch, and it's amazing. All the same stuff I said about laughter also happens with nature. It's amazing. It could happen sitting in your backyard at your pond, if you're lucky enough to have one. It could be sitting under a pine tree. It could take your dog for a walk in the park. As long as your dog is trained, that will cause you more stress if you've got my puppy of 6 weeks old right now. Nature is an amazing place where all these same things happen. And then my last little strategy. Anybody want to guess what my third tip is?
Chocolate.
What is it?
Chocolate.
Chocolate. I like that, chocolate. It is something that well, you've heard about laughter and you probably heard about nature. You might not have heard about gratitude. Unbelievable amounts of research, especially in the medical field. There have been so many studies, especially with cancer patients, and the effect of keeping a gratitude journal. So there is something about not just saying, I'm grateful for my job or my spouse, but actually the process of writing something down, whether it's in a journal, a notepad, it's the writing it down. Study after study showed the recovery and healing process for folks who have adopted an attitude of gratitude. It's amazing. For years, those studies have been done. Here's what I found interesting, bringing us back to the workplace, is what happens when managers and supervisors not only are grateful, but express gratitude to their employees. What happens when employees, when staff have an attitude of gratitude? So this is what they found. Managers and supervisors who feel grateful, so you got to feel it yourself. This is not a tool you bring from a workshop or from a presentation. I'm going to do the gratitude thing. But managers who actually are grateful and then express the gratitude to staff have stronger group cohesiveness and productivity goes up. Employees who practice expressing gratitude at work are more likely, are you ready, to volunteer for more assignments, more willing to take an extra step to accomplish the task, and happily work as part of the team. In other words, gratitude equals productivity. So what I'm talking about in this third strategy is creating a work culture of gratitude. So I've teased you with 3 tips. Let me make a book suggestion. Everywhere I go and give a talk, I always want to suggest a book. How many of you have read or at least aware of this book? This was not only a New York Times bestseller. Gretchen Rubin is amazing. I've seen her on talk shows. She travels internationally talking about her book. What I love about this book, it is not just anecdotal. It is not just inspirational stories. It is so much more, not to put down the self-help book industry, but it is so much more than that because her entire book is research-based. Before she wrote the book, she basically Went through the archives of all the studies around happiness. It is all research-based. And so it's not a book you read from beginning to end in a few nights. It's something you dive into pieces of it. I have done retreats and workshops with all sorts of groups of people. I highly recommend The Happiness Project. And then finally, before I do that, let me tell you the last piece of my story before I bring up Brandy to bring all of this home. End of the story. A man I found out last year, this is Robert Fulgham, a man I found out last year he had terminal cancer. He was a doctor and he knew about dying, and he didn't want to make his family and friends suffer through that with him. So he kept his secret. Everybody said how brave he was to bear his suffering in silence and not tell everybody, and so on and so forth. But privately, his family and friends said how angry they were that he didn't need them and didn't trust their strength. He hid too well. Getting found would have kept him in the game, hide and seek grown-up style, wanting to hide, needing to be sought, confused about being found. I didn't want anyone to know. What will people think? I don't want to bother anyone. Robert goes on to say, better than hide and seek, I like the game called sardines. Who here has ever played sardines or watched children play? Very few people in America know this game. I have played it with children, and it's wonderful. The person who is it goes and hides. And everybody goes looking for that person who's hiding. When you find that person, you get in there with them, and you hide there with them. And pretty soon, somebody giggles and somebody laughs, and everybody gets found. Ollie, ollie, oxen free. The kids out in the street are hollering the cry that says, come on in, wherever you are, it's a new game, and so say I to all of you who have hid too good. Get found, kid. Ollie, ollie, oxen free. That's what Valley Cities is about. Trying to remove the stigma around mental health and substance use so that people who do need help will seek help. The fact is that I've spoken about stress in a way that all of us can relate to, that's ordinary in our lives. And we do need to manage our stress well, but when stress goes on for a long time and it becomes overwhelming and prolonged, that stress or anxiety can turn into a real mental health issue and requires a professional person who can compassionately help that person get to a better place. So what do we do when we have family this holiday, friends this holiday, colleagues? And we know something isn't right, but we're not quite sure what it is or what to do. Unbelievable partnership with King County. Valley Cities offers something called Mental Health First Aid. And so I'm going to have Brandy come up and briefly share with you about this incredible program that all of you can take advantage of. Thank you.